Switching gears for now, Britain's Royal Air Force is facing sharp scrutiny as a new report has now put focus on the effectiveness and the future of its F-35 fighter jet fleet.
The Carney government is reconsidering its multi-billion-dollar purchase of American F-35 fighter jets. Now, the leading candidate as possible replacement would be the Swedish Gripen.
Two major defense companies are in a battle for the future of Canada's fighter jet fleet. Sweden's Saab Gripen versus U.S. firm Lockheed Martin's F-35.
A quiet question has been moving through defense circles, NATO planning rooms, and aviation communities, gaining traction without ever appearing on an official slide or press release. It centers on a single component, yet it touches every nerve of modern air power, from wartime readiness to political leverage. Could Europe's most flexible fighter be heading toward a propulsion shift that redraws the balance of control inside NATO? When Saab's CEO finally addressed the rumor, the response avoided clear answers while revealing far more than expected. What followed exposed a deeper struggle over sovereignty, sustainment, and who truly holds the keys to a nation's air force when it matters most. For months, a rumor has circulated with surprising persistence, not driven by leaks or insider bravado, but by an uncomfortable logic that defense planners have learned not to ignore. The question sounds simple on the surface. Could the Saab Gripen one day fly with a Rolls-Royce engine? Not as a marginal upgrade or distant concept study, but as a real alternative that reshapes how Europe powers and controls one of its most export-oriented fighter aircraft. The implications reach far beyond engineering. If the idea ever moved from discussion to execution, it would alter how nations think about independence in air combat, how alliances manage risk in wartime, and why Washington has been watching the conversation more closely than public statements suggest. Officially, the Gripen E flies with the GEF 414, an American-built engine with a strong track record, solid performance margins, and years of operational data behind it. No one disputes its reliability. No customer has complained about thrust. No Air Force has raised concerns about safety. That reality makes the rumor harder to dismiss, not easier, because it removes the most obvious motive for change. The speculation exists because this discussion has never been about speed, climb rate, or headline numbers. It has always been about control. The idea did not appear out of thin air. Three developments converged quietly, each significant on its own, and together they formed a narrative that defense analysts could not easily dismiss. The first involves the United Kingdom's Tempest program, now part of the broader Global Combat Air Program. Rolls-Royce sits at the heart of that effort, not as a subcontractor, but as a core architect, shaping the propulsion and power generation concepts that will define Europe's next generation of air combat systems. Saab is deeply embedded in the same ecosystem. That shared environment means common digital tools, overlapping research pathways, and long-term alignment on future architectures. Once those links exist, the question emerges naturally. Why should Europe's most export-flexible fighter remain dependent on a non-European propulsion system indefinitely? The second development came from Canada, and it changed the tone of the conversation. When Ottawa evaluated the Gripen, the focus extended well beyond airframe performance. Canada pressed for domestic assembly, deep industrial participation, and full operational autonomy. Those demands exposed an uncomfortable tension. A fighter marketed around sovereignty becomes more complicated when its engine remains subject to foreign approvals, software controls, and export regulations. A European engine changes that equation entirely. It removes a layer of dependency that cannot be mitigated by training or logistics planning. The third factor is rooted in Sweden's defense philosophy, which has shaped the Gripen from the beginning. Swedish air power is designed around dispersion, rapid turnaround, and operations from austere locations, including highways and improvised bases. In that model, engines represent both capability and vulnerability. Saab has long emphasized fast swaps, small ground crews, and minimal support infrastructure. Rolls-Royce has spent years investing in modular cores, field repairable components, and distributed sustainment concepts that align closely with that doctrine. The rumor gained momentum because these ideas fit together too cleanly to ignore. When asked directly about the possibility of a Rolls-Royce-powered Gripen, Saab's CEO chose an answer that raised more eyebrows than a simple denial would have. He spoke about continuously evaluating propulsion technologies that best support customer sovereignty and long-term requirements. Each part of that statement carries weight. Continuous evaluation suggests an open process rather than a closed decision. Propulsion technologies in the plural signals flexibility beyond a single supplier. Operational sovereignty shifts the conversation away from thrust figures and toward authority. That phrasing reframes the issue in political and strategic terms rather than technical ones. Sovereignty in this context has little to do with how fast an aircraft flies. It centers on who approves software changes, who authorizes modifications during conflict, who controls spare parts flows, and who holds veto power when politics collide with military necessity. Modern fighters are as much digital systems as mechanical ones. Engines sit at the intersection of hardware, software, and regulation. Control over that intersection defines how independent an Air Force truly is. Many observers assume stealth defines the modern fighter landscape. Experience suggests otherwise. Logistics and sustainment increasingly shape real-world capability. Engines determine maintenance cycles, upgrade timelines, and the degree to which an operator can adapt an aircraft under pressure. The F-35 illustrates this reality clearly. Its combat performance is formidable, yet its sustainment model remains centralized and tightly managed. The Gripen represents a contrasting philosophy, built around decentralization and local control. Now consider what happens if that decentralized aircraft pairs with a propulsion system governed entirely within Europe. The shift does not threaten the F-35 in a dogfight. It challenges the political dynamics of procurement and alliance dependence. Nations would gain access to a high-end fighter without external approval chains embedded deep within its most critical systems. That prospect makes policymakers uncomfortable because it reduces leverage. From a purely technical standpoint, the Gripen does not require more power. The existing engine meets performance needs comfortably. The pressure point lies elsewhere. Faster maintenance, easier field repairs, local overhaul authority, and digital independence matter more than incremental thrust gains. Rolls-Royce has built its reputation around lifecycle efficiency and customer-specific customization rather than chasing record-setting numbers. That philosophy aligns closely with Saab's approach to fighter design. This alignment helps explain why the rumor persists. Saab did not dismiss it, because doing so would undermine a strategic signal already sent to potential customers. The message is subtle, but clear. The Gripen will not lock operators into a single path that limits their freedom over time. That assurance resonates with governments that have grown more cautious about long-term dependencies. The conversation becomes even more complex when Canada re-enters the picture. Saab has operated in Canada for decades across naval, air, and land systems, supplying critical technologies that underpin Canadian defense operations. The company's combat management and surveillance systems sit at the core of Halifax-class frigates, supporting NORAD maritime warning missions. This established footprint gives Saab credibility when discussing deeper industrial involvement. Interest from Ukraine has added another layer. Saab's CEO has publicly acknowledged Kyiv's interest in acquiring more than 100 Gripen fighters, a number that would require a significant expansion of production capacity. Canada has emerged as a potential location for assembly to meet that demand. Such a move would extend Canadian involvement beyond procurement into manufacturing, sustainment, and long-term support. The idea of Canada operating a mixed fleet of F-35s and Gripens has resurfaced periodically. Historically, the Royal Canadian Air Force moved away from mixed fleets due to cost and complexity. Training pipelines, infrastructure, and supply chains multiply quickly when multiple platforms coexist. Yet, circumstances evolve. Industrial partnerships, domestic assembly, and technology transfer can offset some of those challenges. Saab's proposal emphasized exactly those points, highlighting the Gripen ease, adaptability to harsh climates, low operating costs, and small logistical footprint. Pilots familiar with both the Gripen and the Hornet have noted the aircraft's intuitive design and emphasis on pilot workload reduction. The Gripen E represents a substantial leap beyond earlier variants, incorporating advanced sensors, electronic warfare systems, and networked capabilities designed to operate seamlessly within NATO frameworks. Beyond fighters, Saab's expanding partnerships in Canada underscore a broader strategy. The GlobalEye airborne early warning platform combines Swedish system integration with the Canadian-built Bombardier Global 6000 and 6500 airframes. This collaboration demonstrates how sovereign capability can emerge through shared industrial ecosystems rather than isolated national programs. Training partnerships with CAE further deepen that integration, creating high-fidelity simulation environments tailored to complex modern missions. All of this context feeds back into the engine discussion. Propulsion decisions rarely begin with announcements. They start with design margins, compatibility studies, and long-term roadmaps that leave options open. A manufacturer does not need to replace an engine tomorrow to signal intent. It only needs to ensure that future paths remain viable. The Gripen's appeal has always rested on flexibility. It promises nations a fighter that adapts to their needs rather than forcing them into rigid structures. Leaving the door open to alternative propulsion reinforces that promise. It tells customers that sovereignty will not erode as systems evolve and alliances shift. The rumor endures because it answers a question governments have begun asking more openly. Who controls an air force during crisis, not in theory, but in practice? Ownership does not end at delivery. Control extends through sustainment, upgrades, and wartime adaptation. Engines sit at the center of that reality. Saab's CEO did not confirm a Rolls-Royce Gripen. He did something more consequential. He acknowledged the concern driving the speculation and validated its relevance. In an environment where power increasingly flows through logistics and permissions rather than raw performance, that acknowledgement carries weight. Once policymakers view engines as instruments of influence, assumptions about air power shift quietly, steadily, and in ways that cannot be reversed easily, and that change has already begun. So what do you think? Tell us in the comments, subscribe to our channel for more, and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our uploads. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next one.